Okay. Calling to order the Planning and Zoning Commission for Town of Ashford, regular meeting on Monday, March 10th, 2025 at 7:03 PM. I'd like to make just a quick announcement before we go into the full agenda is simply thanking Valerie Oliver for her service to the commission as recording secretary. Valerie stepped down from the position. She informed us actually back in December and actually gave us a couple of extra months coverage on that. So we appreciate that very much. And during that time, we were able to find someone, and she's joining us tonight, Cheyenne Bourbeau, relatively new resident of the town of Ashford. Her family moved here in October. And so Cheyenne is going to be our recording secretary. So I ask that, especially the members, you identify yourself when you speak, when you make a motion or second a motion, especially until Cheyenne gets to know us and our inflections and our tone and such. Hello, Cheyenne.
Hi, how is everybody doing tonight?
Good, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
So again, and I see you got on, you're good, you're in. And again, if there are any issues or if you need anything clarified or need, if I haven't spoken out, if someone speaks and you haven't caught it as motion, again, you can reach out now or just use the recording afterwards, as you're well aware.
Will do. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Okay, very good. All right, so we're calling the meeting to order. The seating of alternates. Our only alternate here is Doug, and I see that Luther and Dick Williams are not available, so we're going to seat Doug Jenny for Luther Brausch. And I think I've caught everybody. Doug, hello, you're on. You're with us?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Doug. And we will move forward with that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That gives us 8 members tonight. So all the voting totals should total 8. A combination of yes, no's, and abstentions. Okay, looking for approval of minutes of January 13th.
I'll move. It's Janet. I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Janet Bellamy motioning. Is there a second?
Jerry Dufresne, second.
Jerry seconds. And any discussion on the minutes? Corrections, clarifications, concerns?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January 13th, 2025, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions, especially if you weren't here last time? So moved. Thank you very much. Unanimous. Okay, moving on to public comment. Again, public comment, as it's described, is limited to topics or items not otherwise listed on the agenda. Again, this really limits discussion on those items if we were to have a hearing, something for public hearing, or processing an application receipt. Otherwise it's kind of fair game. I would limit anyone who is going to share any information with us under public comment to 5 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to speak under public comments? Seeing no electronic hands or otherwise hands waving at me, we'll move on from there. Bills, looks like we received a bill from the Chronicle for $184.97. Mike, that's not a usual hearing or anything like that. Was that some
That's
notice?
the Chronicle bills like on an alternating schedule. So because of when our meetings fall, we typically get half of a bill in one month and half in another.
Okay.
And so we have, that is either, I think it's half of a legal notice bill. It's also approximately the cost for the notice of decision following any meeting.
Notice of decision. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, very good. Moving on. We are discussing correspondence. We received, at least I saw the one page. Did we get in any registration information yet, Mike, for this, excuse me,
Yeah.
the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies?
Yeah, we have the like form you fill out to attend or to register. I just pulled the advertisement kind of explaining what it was that came with it.
Right, right. Okay. So again, this is the annual meeting they hold at the AquaTurf. A number of us went last year, had a great great discussion with some of the planning and zoning folks from New Milford and the Candlewood Lake area. So if you are interested, I would say what, Mike, reach out to you, reach out to Bonnie for the form.
Yeah, if they just call the office or let me know, and then we'll get you registered.
Okay, very good. We kind of carpooled down the last time, and the uh, uh, speaker this time is a retired judge who's worked on a lot of land use legislation in the state, Judge Marshall Berger, and he'll be discussing affordable housing appeals, meaning how the appeal process affects the towns and what can or cannot be done when it comes to meeting the state requirement of 10% to not necessarily allow a developer to just simply come in and go forward with whatever plan they have for development. Janet, did I see you wanted to say something?
You're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. What was the date of that?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's March 27th, so it's coming up soon.
March 27.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
at this time, having looked at my screen here, I see that Luther has joined us. So Cheyenne, Luther has joined us at, unless you caught it sooner, around 7:10, 7:11. And in this case, we will switch Doug's appointment as an alternate to Dick Williams. He'll replace Richard Williams. And Luther will be seated. Any other questions on the Federation meeting? None at this point. Okay, very good. We do not have, item number 6, we do not have a public hearing scheduled for this evening, so we'll move on from there. And we'll go to unfinished business, which is a review of the, for lack of a better term, the IID Special Development District draft. Mike provided us with some information on that with the meeting materials. Again, this is a very important piece. Oh no. Okay, so we're full with also seated or also attending the meeting, if you didn't catch this, Cheyenne, is Alex Castillo, who is one of our alternates. So Alex has joined the meeting also at this time. Can't imagine how they expect me to run a hybrid meeting. I can't run a regular Zoom meeting. Okay. So to that end, again, this is an important section. This is what we're trying to do with the IID zone. I mean, between our previous text amendment hearings that we had and the public input regarding plan development, what we're seeing, and we'll get into this a little bit with the POCD from our survey responses and those people responding. The middle of the road, the conservative group, the groups in the middle of both sides of this, where you have development or we don't want development, most of them say, yes, we want development, but we want planned development. So this is what we're really trying to do. We're trying to plan areas for development that are appropriate for it, as well as the type of development that is appropriate for it. So, Mike, that's really all I can do for an intro for you. Do you want to take the stage on this?
Yep. So I want to clarify, this draft is not online. I made some updates from the one that was previously posted online, but following posting of the document online for the last meeting, we got some people that stopped into the office and others that were sort of submitting their written comments. And we tried to clarify, this is a draft the commission is still working on. We're not even in a complete draft stage. The comments that go to the commission will happen when there's a draft and the public hearing is scheduled. And that's important because even though it might feel like that means we're trying to not gather input, but the reason why it's important is because the information that comes from the public to the commission needs to occur during the public hearing, because you base your decision on the evidence that's in the record. So if somebody provides something to you now, and 3 months from now we're having a public hearing and somebody else is on that call, they're not going to have the benefit of these comments that might have come to you in March or February or in April. So we want to make sure that all the public feedback on these regulations, in whatever form they ultimately take, happens during the hearing, so that everybody, members of the public, property owners, and all the commission members have the benefit of analyzing the entire record, and we're comparing apples to apples. So I think it created a little bit of confusion at the last meeting for some folks that maybe weren't on the meeting. And so we started getting a lot of feedback and people thinking that we were sort of much further along in the process. So
And Mike, Mike, if I may also add, people need to let the commission do its work. And the fact that we are developing a draft, we can't even call it a complete draft at this point. As you stated, comments at this point, before there's any product to put out at a public hearing to gain comments and gain reaction, is really premature. As you said, it would be incomplete information for anybody not attending the information that we share at the public hearing. And that's why we announce our public hearings. That's why we have and solicit public input when we have a product that we can share. So again, please, we really appreciate your interest, but please let the commission, the elected officials of the commission, try and do their work. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, so I'm going to just share my screen. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is flip it a little bit. I'm going to start with a quick flow chart that I put together just to kind of outline the process, because I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page, and that people that are following along with this understand what we're sort of currently contemplating. So hopefully you're seeing my screen. And you're seeing two flow charts. Is that what's up?
Yes.
Okay. So on the left-hand side in blue, this is the traditional process that is in place now for almost every single approval this commission does. It's a special permit process. The special permit application is an approval of a use which is expressly allowed by the zoning regulations, provided the commission determines that it meets the criteria that are established in the regulations themselves. So that involves the submission of an application, it involves a public hearing, it involves a decision. So whether we're talking about the general commercial zone, the IID zone, or the technology tech, whatever that official zone is called, the process for a development to gain approval in any of those zones as it sits today is they submit the application, we schedule a public hearing, and the commission issues a decision. 3 steps. The process on the left is the process that an application would follow under the PRDD that is sort of contemplated now. So there are obviously, as everybody can see, a lot more steps, and not every step involves a public hearing. But there are more public hearings through this process than there would be through the process that's currently in place. And again, in sort of the interest of transparency, because just because there's not a public hearing does not mean that the public then isn't involved. At every point that this application goes through the process, it still is going to hit an agenda. It will still involve something that this commission reviews. So it's all happening out in the open. There's just a lot more steps. So just very quickly on the right-hand side, the process that we're considering involves a zoning verification, which means it hits an agenda. The commission reviews it. It's a binary decision, meaning if they meet the criteria, you say yes, okay. You've demonstrated you meet the eligibility standards in the PRDD, so you can go forward with an application. It's essentially a really, really extreme application receipt. There's no fluff here. There's no subjectivity here. You say you meet the criteria. Yes. Okay. We issue the decision to say yes. Then they go on and they do a zone map amendment. So they're going to say, hey, this is the property. You've determined that property meets the criteria in your regulations. So now I'd like to submit a zone change application to actually land this PRDD on my property. That involves a public hearing. The other thing that they're going to have to do is to submit a master plan, of which we outline what it needs to include in the regulations. So again, under the traditional zone change process, the applicant says, I want to go from R80 to IID. They have to tell you why it complies with the TOCD, but they don't have to tell you how big the building is they might want to build. They don't have to tell you exactly what use. They don't have to tell you the user. They don't have to tell how many parking spaces. They don't tell you any of that. So this process will be twofold. It'll have the map amendment, which says they want to change their zone, but it will also require master plan approval, which is where we're going to ask them to tell us a whole bunch of things, including approximate size of buildings, approximate use, approximate number of parking spaces, approximate areas of landscaping, some very conceptual information, but more than what we would get if they went through the zone change process traditionally. So then once we have the master plan approval and the zone map amendment approval, both of which involve public hearings, and those decisions are both yes, then the last step is a site plan application. That does not include a public hearing. And the reason for that is that this site plan application can only be developed in accordance with the master plan that the commission has already approved. So they can't come before you and say, I'm going to build a restaurant, and then show up and say, well, as it turns out, it's not going to be a restaurant. It's going to be 500,000 square feet of warehouse. So the reason why the last step is at this point not showing a public hearing is because it's only in accordance with the master plan approval. If they are not in accordance with the master plan approval, they have to go back and get a new master plan approved. A lot of people think that the special permit process is highly discretionary by the commission, meaning if you don't like something, if you get a lot of public opposition, or for some other undefined reason you're uncomfortable with an application submitted, you have the flexibility to simply deny. And that's not really the case. You should be denying a special permit application if you do not feel that it has met the special permit standards and there's no sort of conditions or modifications to the permit that you could make that would bring them into general accordance with what is in the zoning regulations. So if they demonstrate the standards in the regs and the use is already deemed allowable in the zone, you don't have the authority to arbitrarily issue a denial simply because of you think the building is too big or it's too tall or people don't like it. And so I'll say that is how 90% of special permit applications are handled across all of the towns in Connecticut, but it is not as subjective as a lot of people think. What I'm suggesting here, a zone map amendment and the master plan approval, you are acting in what is called your legislative capacity, which gives you more broad discretion in your review of these applications. So the reason the last step doesn't need a hearing is because all of that contemplation and all of that discussion should be happening as the master plan for the property is developed. The site plan should simply be a final refinement of the master plan that was approved. And so at that point, there isn't a hearing because it's more of a yes or no in accordance with that master plan. So I'm trying not to oversimplify it, but I'm also trying to make sure that I hit on the things that I think people are most interested in. So if people have questions, like certainly stop me, I can go through it, but if not, I'll go back up to the top and kind of take you through some of the things that I've amended and kind of adjusted since the last version.
Any
Thoughts?
questions from any of the members? Yes, Janet.
Yeah, I have a question. The public hearing would address both the zone map amendment and the master plan?
Yes, correct.
And is that the only public hearing?
Those would be the two public hearings. Yes. So there would be a public hearing related to the actual changing of the zone, and then there would be a public hearing related to the prepared master plan.
Two separate public hearings.
But wouldn't the, I thought that oh, so they're not going to submit the master plan until we've approved the zone map amendment?
Well, so typically in the way that it's kind of shown here is that they would be submitted together because we're requiring them to do both. You and the other kind of piece to this is we're including language which says if they don't get to the last step. So if they get the master plan and the zone map amendment approved, but they don't get to the site plan application within a year or request a 1-year extension, their master plan approval expires, which basically means don't come before us with something that's not based in reality, because you're not going to come back 5 years from now and try to execute it. What we really want is the master plan to be reflective of a development that they truly intend to build. And if they don't, the master plan expires, the zone change remains in effect, but they would have to then come back and get a new master plan approved.
So they could come to us with a master plan and then you'd have a hearing on the same night. Is that correct? If we,
Yes, so
if
you're
we
correct. Most of that is likely to be done at the same time. However, the decisions are separate, and you may decide that it is appropriate for the zone to be changed, but that the master plan isn't appropriate. And so you might say, we agree this is a great parcel that's ripe for this type of development. We think it's appropriate. It makes sense. It aligns with the POCD, whatever. However, this master plan is not appropriate because it's too many cuts and fills, or it doesn't have enough attenuation of stormwater, or it's proposing too many parking spaces, whatever. You'd be able to separate those two parts of the decision.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess the last thing that I'll say is the process, we've kind of talked about this before, the process of developing a fully engineered site plan that has buildings, stormwater, lighting, landscaping, parking, and all the design that we require on a piece of property that is maybe even 25 acres is several $100,000, or it very well could be. In this case, we have wells that need to be designed. We would have septic systems that need to be designed that would be permitted by the state. There's a lot of engineering and design that goes into getting a plan ready to go to the commission for a special permit. If we really want this to be a process where the commission has the ability to talk with the developer and give feedback, we need to have that dialogue with them at a point in the process where they have not already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a design that they are in a lot of ways committed to. And so this process really seeks to gain that feedback and have that happen when they're still sort of in that design phase, and it's easier to incorporate suggestions by the commission. Reworking a parking lot, adjusting some topography, leaving an area of the property, undisturbed versus another, that may require a complete rework of a site plan, which at the final design stage is not likely to happen, which is really the goal of this process. So let me take it back to the top, and just kind of run through again this overall draft. I've refined some of the sections and some of the wording and try to make it more clear, but there's not been any drastic shift in what it said from the previous. So we're still saying 35-acre parcel size. I clarified B, so now it says frontage on, contiguous with, or accessible by a state highway. And the designations of the general commercial technology development or interstate interchange development remain the same. The application process is what I just outlined. This is sort of a step-by-step. So the zoning verification approval is that first item. We then get to the zone map amendment and master plan approval, which explains again, they need to submit in conjunction with the map amendment, a master plan, which includes the following. So they're going to provide a narrative statement, including the intent of the district of that development, the proposed uses, approximate building size, consistency with the POCD. That's narrative. They'll then submit a conceptual site plan depicting the proposed schematic design of the site, including proposed building footprints, parking areas, landscape buffers, information regarding the provisions of water, sewer, fire suppression, drainage, and utilities, and the location of identified wetlands, water courses, natural diversity database areas, flood zones, and or proposed open spaces, and that should say and. So these are all things that'll be on the conceptual site plan. We're also asking them to submit preliminary floor plan. So this will show how the interior of the space is intended to be utilized. And then example architectural elevations of proposed buildings, photographs, etc. So the idea is giving the commission some idea of what type of building they're asking for. They're going to provide a zoning information table, which will show the total size of the lot, the amount of frontage, proposed setbacks, yards, separation between buildings, the total lot coverage and building coverage, and then floor area by use. So if there are several uses proposed, they'll give us some information on how much square foot is going to be allocated for each use. And then an expected number of parking spaces. We're allowing the commission to then, based upon the applicability, ask for additional documentation, including view shed analysis, fiscal impact analysis, traffic impact assessment, or any other information. So these are all the things that would be submitted with those applications and be part of the public hearing and be completely subject to public comment.
Mike, can you explain what a view shed analysis is?
Yep. So, a lot of times you see this with, and I'm not saying this wouldn't come in under this type of application, but they'll do different types of either renderings or other, they used to do way back like balloon tests, some way where they kind of show you how the building, what the view shed might be. So how it may fit into the topography on the property.
Okay.
So I'm gonna scroll down to permitted uses. This is, very overarching. And again, because you are under no obligation to approve a master plan, you don't have to be as concerned about including any specific use in here unless you don't trust yourselves as the commission to be able to say, we don't think this is appropriate and we're going to say no. But what I've tried to do is include use categories rather than listing out each individual use, because these things are very fluid. So we have residential uses, retail uses, service uses, employment uses, and industrial uses. Many of these were pulled right from the current zoning regs and IID. I specified specifically for like warehousing, primarily within a building, because I don't think we would want just a large laydown yard without a building that someone was going to be doing outdoor storage. Again, you have that flexibility, but I think it's important to communicate, if it's off the table, it shouldn't be on this list. And then as we get to the bottom, I'm clarifying what I've explained to you, which is that you're exercising your legislative discretion in approving these applications, and the expiration of within 12 months. So that's, again, going through the whole process again in a nutshell. I can answer any questions anybody would have. We can let me know what you don't like, what you do like. I'm all ears.
I'm muted here. Any questions?
Yeah, Mike, I have a
clarification?
question.
Go ahead, Nord.
On the two public hearings, could you have them on the same day?
Yes.
All right.
Anyone else?
No one else has a question. I'll ask one.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Am I muted. So Mike, we did not permit warehousing in our previous regulations, and people in town have certainly voiced opposition to it. So if we include it here and we have no size restrictions, what are we saying? Are we saying that telling people that it's okay to come in and request those?
So you're saying that someone could come in and request one, yes. Part of the reason why I included it, there was a couple of reasons. Number one of the things that the state has been very proactive in, and I think we've talked about this, was the consideration of sites that they could cite for potential data center. They were looking all across the state for sites, and I don't know where any of those stand at this moment, but warehousing is a lot of different things. There are many different types of warehouses, and it really just means, the storage of things inside of a building. So you might, in the master plan process, decide that a last mile fulfillment center is not appropriate. You may decide that a high cube facility is not appropriate, but a facility that stores large amounts of material for long periods of time and is not an Amazon last mile, for example, would have less traffic than a Dollar General or your average restaurant. And so I thought it made sense for you to at least have the opportunity to look at that. Our tech development zone does include computer and data processing centers. And the IID, that one of the things that we saw in that last application, because there was ambiguity in the regulations with regard to the allowable uses and how things were defined, talked about, let me get to it. Where's the manufacturing, and what manufacturing includes versus what warehousing includes, and a manufacturing use, again, depending on the user and the specific type of use, could be far more intrusive because they're actually making the products versus they're bringing in raw materials, producing something and then shipping it out. Whereas a warehouse could be very similar, but they're not interacting with the material once it comes on the property. It's just sitting in the building.
Okay, I was also going to ask you about manufacturing because if we don't, we have no, we just say manufacturing. So we can turn down any manufacturing concern if we're not happy with what it's bringing in or putting out.
I think I think what you'd be looking at is trying to tease out during that master plan what it is they're trying to do, which is part of the statement of use that we're asking for, because again, not all manufacturing is the same. And, some of it involves the assembly of components where we're bringing in a couple of different things and maybe we're making aerospace components. Some of it could be raw materials. There's a lot of different things that go into it. And you may find that certain uses or certain types of manufacturing are not appropriate, and others are.
All right, thank you.
Luther, you had your electronic hand up earlier. Are you still having a question or clarification or statement?
No, I mean, mainly I really like the direction this is going, and I think it gives great flexibility for the commission with letting a potential developer come to the commission with, like Mike said, at the concept level before they've spent, up to $250,000 to be rejected. So I think it's smart and fair for everyone. I like that there's double the opportunity for public input. I like everything about it. I like the direction it's gone in, and I think it's smart.
Thank you, Luther. Mike, I have just a quick question for my own poorly developed sense of intelligence. Um, we haven't given up our standardization. We still need to flesh out our standards, correct? For each of the zones. Building height, building size, all of that still remains, correct?
So it still remains within the regulations,
Right.
but this essentially, once the master plan and the zone change get approved, the nuts and bolts of this application, or that, the approved development, whatever you want to call it, become the regulations for the property. So our traditional process is we say in the, and pull it up just so we can reference it. We have for in the IID zone, or let's use technology. All we talk about is IID. Let's see what they are for. It's in here. So the building coverage in the technology zone is 25%, meaning they can have up to 25% building coverage, up to 40% impervious. Impervious coverage and pervious parking give them 60% coverage with 25% green space. So they're allowed 25% maximum coverage. So let's say we're dealing with, whatever, a 50-acre site, they're allowed 12 and a half, or whatever no, I didn't do that math right, 6 acres of coverage, right?
So 30 acres, yeah. Would you say 25%?
25%, yeah.
25%. Yeah.
The math I was, trying to do in my head, which obviously I failed at, was
Well,
even though the regulations allow up to 25%, if the master plan that they ask for and the commission approves only shows 12% building coverage, then that becomes the standard for this development, right? They don't get a master plan approved and say, oh, well, we gave you a master plan that shows 10% building coverage, but your regs allow 25. So we're going to just, after we get the approval, we're going to show you at 24%. The nuts and bolts of the master plan approval literally become the zoning regulations for that singular development.
Understood. As opposed to being applied to the entire zone, it's to that parcel. It's specific to that parcel.
And then what that means is if they change their minds and they say, oh, as it turns out, we want to double our building size, or we need to shift this around, or we want to build one big building instead of three, even if they meet the criteria of the regs, they're still coming back to you because you need to approve a modification to their master plan.
Right. Right.
So there's a lot more sort of back and forth in the process because they're not just looking at, okay, what do the regulations say? And if I meet the regulations, I'm good to go. And some of that stuff might even be, done by staff. It's okay, I'm making these changes. I need to go back and I need to modify my master plan with the commission to make sure we're on the same page before they can go forward.
So the likelihood is that if they had, the 25% requirement and they were looking to exceed that 25% requirement, then the commission has recourse to evaluate and decide as to basically whether that zone map change is appropriate or not.
Right, because we don't call out those specific design metrics in the Planned Rural Development District themselves. So you could certainly say, well, this property is being cited in the technology development zone, which has a building coverage of 25%, and we'd like to keep it at that. But again, the whole purpose of this is to try to encourage higher quality developments.
Right.
So you could decide you want to hold them at 5%. You could let them go to 50% because maybe they're including really high level stormwater and maybe they're putting a green roof on the building. You can have that discussion.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Other input from commissioners? Questions, clarification?
I have a question.
Yes, Nord.
Does this special permit application process apply only to IID zone, or does it apply to our total book of regulations?
It would apply only to parcels which meet the criteria in that second or third section. So it would be
C, site eligibility in the
right.
plan.
They would have to be at least 35 acres, have frontage on or be contiguous with state highway, and be on a parcel that is either commercially zoned, technology development zoned, or IID zoned. So this would not
Okay.
apply to any of the residential zoned.
All right,
parcels.
thank you for clarifying that. Now I have another question. If we adopt this, is this gonna, which I like this, the streamlining of this process. If we adopt this into our regs, will that require a public hearing?
Yes, so there's
Mhm.
still more refinement that needs to be done with this draft. The final draft would get presented to you. Then we would refer it to CROG. We would schedule a public hearing, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So what else do we need to flesh out in this, Mike?
So I think if we are generally okay with the approach to this point, what I will do is try to do a little bit of a mapping exercise to determine the eligibility of parcels to get a sense for the commission of what parcels fall within the being eligible, the total universe, if you will. I need to add a few more details to a couple of things, and I have made some notes while we've been talking of stuff I want to additionally clarify. And then I want to kind of do an internal gut check with people on my team to see if somebody else can break it. And then if we get through those items, we'll ultimately have a final draft, which would go on the agenda for the commission to review. And if you liked it at that point, you would schedule the hearing and we would do the referrals.
So the zone map amendment under D in the application process, that would effectively be if someone did have an RA area and they wanted to potentially do this and it qualifies under the site eligibility part, but it's kind of chicken or the egg. They would not be able to do this because it's not in one of the three identified current zones, right?
Right. So that as it stands now, any RA parcel would not be eligible. And, you know, we can talk more about that when if I do the mapping, we can kind of see what the total parcels are. But we could, again, because you are not obligated to make a decision about these zone changes, if you wanted to make it more flexible, you could allow it on parcels that were zoned RA if they met certain criteria, or we could just essentially eliminate C, and it would then have to be 35 acres and still have the frontage on contiguous with state highway. They just wouldn't have to be on a in a non-residential zone. So that would be something the commission could think about, and you can tell me what you prefer.
So someone could tell me, and again, tell me if I'm way out on this. Someone could with an RA, and they put in a zone map amendment to go from RA to general commercial in one step, and potentially then approach us about applying, again, a site eligible location that was RA, and we say we approve on the zoning map that it's going to be a general commercial. Then they could again take the extra step and go and apply for having the PRDD put to it. Yes.
Yes, I guess if they really wanted this, they could do a zone change to general commercial. And then if they were 35 acres or more and had frontage on or were contiguous with a state highway, they could then come back and submit a zone change to PRDD. But again, the landing of those zones and obviously it's upon consideration of the POCD. So I guess if they convince the commission that it is appropriate and supported by the POCD to go from RA to GC, then they would have to then do it all over again. But I think
To get the PRDD applied, right?
Right. So that would be a public hearing on the GC, a public hearing on the PRDD, and then a public hearing on the master plan.
Right.
And the other thing that is worth noting with a zone change, which this process would involve, it involves the notification to abutters, right? So the abutted property owners would be notified that this change was going to be submitted. So there would be the direct notice, just like the traditional process in that way as well.
Right. Right. Thank you. Anything else from commissioners? Mike, what do you need from us to move forward besides me nodding my head and saying, please do?
Well, I think that if we're, cautiously optimistic that this makes some coherent sense, then I will continue to sort of just make some refinements with a goal of hopefully having a complete draft or depending on how complicated it becomes, that mapping exercise pulled together for the next meeting so that you can start to see the parcels that would be eligible. And if you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, that's way too many, then we can adjust the eligibility. If you look at it and say, well, there's some other parcels in my mind that I think make sense, and we can adjust it from there. But that may help you sort of see how this might hit the ground.
Okay. Janet?
I'm sorry, I almost forgot. I had hoped that we would include the low impact development checklist is something that we would require in the application process?
So that is a site plan. I mean, we can include language about low impact development, but I mean, I think overall, what might make more sense is to take some of that language and include it into the actual site standards, because then it applies across the board. You know, most of our applications won't go through this process, so they won't be subject to it. If we amended our site plan standards, then it would apply to everyone. So we can do whatever you would prefer.
Yeah, it would be better to have it apply to everyone, obviously.
But let me look at that, and we could, depending on what makes the most sense, if we decide to do it that way, we could just, you know, if this goes to an amendment, we could just run those concurrently so that they would be effective together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else from anyone on this? Okay, Mike, thank you very much on that. And please, take the time to review this. If you haven't really given it a good look-see, as Mike is going to do with his group, he's going to test this to see how it works. I tried to think a little bit out of the box if what it would entail for someone to make a change from an RA standpoint. 3 hearings they'd have to go through at the very least and get it past the commission that way. So it better be a darn good plan and effective and helpful for the citizens to get through 3 hearings that way. So, Mike, I look forward to the further input. Let us know what we can do for you.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, I go here. Okay, so that was the unfinished business. The new business for the review of the updated commission application form, item A. So application process. Okay. So Mike, did you say you had some items or something to share, or you just want to have a
Yeah.
discussion on this?
Yeah. So a couple, 2 meetings ago, maybe 3, the commission had talked about sort of standardizing the application submissions and trying to create more continuity between the information submitted by applicants and the expectations of the commission. So with that in mind, Bonnie and I, mostly Bonnie, of course, have been working on a document that could be included as part of the actual application form. And this is not related to what we just talked about. This is just applications to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And this is a draft. I've got some changes that we're going to make, but I'm just going to share this so you can get a sense of what we're like working towards. So the items on the left are verbatim requirements out of the zoning regulations. And so what we would do is just, ask them to either indicate that it's been provided or that they're requesting a waiver. And so, these are pulled right from, as it says in the top, the list from section 300-22A2. So these are all the criteria. And then, for example, you'll see at the bottom here, an A2 survey prepared, right? So let's say this is a special use permit for a new restaurant in an existing cafe location. You don't need a survey for a use that has no changes to a building, for example, or maybe there's an existing survey, who knows? Point being, they would then just clarify that they're requesting a waiver, and the regulations allow the commission to find the application to be complete without the submission of those additional materials. But again, just trying to communicate the requirements of the regulations. I think what I'll want to do is separate this out a little bit more, and so that it's either, provided, not applicable, and kind of separate it. And then I think I also may want to simplify some of these a little bit so that they know what the heck we're actually asking for, and then we can point to the regulations for more information. But this would just become part of the application form.
So that was initially as I thought, and then as I looked at it, are there items on there that one would expect to be on a site plan, such as the True North and all of that stuff? Is it really? My concern is that things that are really important not get hidden or washed away when it comes to the commission making a decision, that they have done their due diligence, without becoming too redundant. It's in the regs, so, obviously they should be looking at it, but to make it part of that application process, I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Anyone else want to give any input?
I will say some of that is on there. So there's language in there that talks about a site plan that includes the direction of true north, the zoning classification, the shape, dimensions of the lot, the required setbacks, but property owners talks about, and then at the bottom it also talks about a statement of the proposed use, a brief statement indicating the traffic impact. So it kind of includes the fundamental components of a site plan, and it does also talk about some of the other more, or maybe less technical components.
Luther.
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, I like the direction you're going in with this. The feedback I would have is if we just had check boxes for provided, not applicable, or waiver requested, and then a notes section next to it, because it'd be nice to be able to capture in this just a brief statement. If they're selecting not applicable, it'd be nice to just be able to have a very short statement as to why they say it's not applicable, instead of just being able to check off the box. It'd just be nice to be able to capture that. And the same thing with a waiver. It doesn't have to be their entire waiver application, but just my 2 cents that it'd be nice to be able to capture those things right in the form.
Yeah, that's exactly what we had talked about. So we'll probably, go in that direction.
Because I know I started to write down all of those and my hand got tired, so I stopped. But I mean, some of the things I looked at were, was there a pre-application discussion review? Again, in this case, done or waived. Are there other required permits? Check all that apply, Eastern Highlands, Ashford Inland Wetlands, state agency, federal agency. And I'll email any of these to you, Mike, to see if you think they're of any value. Is a site plan required? Has the owner or owner agent documented that they're submitting it, so that it's not someone who isn't necessarily owner of the parcel. And again, the professionally prepared site plan, this is where items A through Y, I just simply put items A through Y. So you've listed it all out, which is great. But I think it gives us more input. I think it's a great way to go with this. And yeah, if you're going to be looking at some other things, and like I said, I'll email you some of the items that I had thought were more important or highly important for us, and others that we might not need. Again, I'd hate to lose the important ones in all of this, and it just becomes, it's such a laborious task. but I do want it to have some teeth to it also.
Yeah, I mean, if this gets included as a special, as part of the application, even if it's not part of the zoning regulations in that we don't have a specific section, if, you know, if you decide that you, I'm not saying you should, but let's say you want a copy of the deed for any parcel that's the subject of an application, you know, if it's part of the application form and you determine these are the items that you either need or you need information from the applicant as to why they don't believe it's necessary for an application to be complete and comprehensive. You don't, you don't need to have a line in the regulations just to have a line in your application form. So if, you know, we started this by just pulling the sections from the regs, but if we want to shift it and in a way that is more inclusive of the things the commission expects to have as part of an application, then that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you, I don't know how you feel about this. Can you send the members a copy of the, what you've worked on so far?
Sure,
That'd be great.
no problem.
Input from other commissioners? Clarifications? Questions?
I think it's a great idea. I agree with Luther.
Great. Mike, anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay,
I will, work with Bonnie to get some edits and get it more up to speed, and then we'll share it.
we'll just keep adding to your plate. Absolutely. Okay, very good. Moving on to item B under new business, plan of conservation development status. Obviously, we have members that are on the subcommittee. And I just wanted to share what we've been doing, where we're at, and members can obviously pipe in, add in whatever they feel is appropriate. First off, I want to thank the members of the subcommittee, especially all the ones that are on the regular commission, as well as our lay people that are there. Mark, Janet, Luther. We also have Christina Sebo and Nora Galvin joining us. We've been meeting pretty much. I think we missed one or maybe two because there was Thanksgiving in there. Pretty much every Thursday since November on this. So the group's been very, very dedicated, very motivated to move through and get this done in time for the middle part of the year. We've had section submissions from most of the agencies. We've completed some to develop a template of how we want each of the agency sections to look. Some are still under review, and a few are actually sent back in order to get further information or fleshing out to better meet our template now that we know what our template is going to look like. And when I talk about that template, what you'll see when it comes to the submissions of the agencies, it's pretty much a similar narrative. We asked them to update any information in there, but very similar to the previous POCD of 2015. However, what we've really concentrated on are the objectives and goals, making those both more actionable, as well as breaking them out. We have goals that are specific to the agencies themselves, things that we don't have a dog in that hunt when it comes to planning and zoning. But we've also asked them to develop goals that do require either PZC influence, assistance, or partnering to achieve. Obviously, some agencies don't have anything along those lines that we've been able to identify, but we do have a number of them that do or will, both governance, economic development, ag, the Ag Commission, Conservation Commission, are all very active with PZC, obviously. So we've identified those. We've done a survey that came out for the month of December. We received 198 responses of that survey. We had 3 narrative questions, open-ended questions, 14, 15, and 16, and those generated 486 written responses. Thank God for technology as well as Luther and Mike. To summarize that, they use Chat GPT, which does a ranking and summarizing response. Luther was very helpful on that, as well as Mike, to allow us to really boil down what was important in those responses and using the technology. So that was great. We're also having a listening session that I want to make sure all PZC members are invited to. That listening session is on March 28th from 6 to 8 in Knowlton Hall. We're serving pizza and refreshments. We're inviting all of the different agencies as commissions, as well as the public at large to attend this. We're going to give a short presentation on where we're at, what we've been doing, and where we're at, as well as I said, it's a listening session. After they've heard what we had to say and we've shared some of the results, getting their feedback, getting the public's feedback, the commissioners, the different members of boards, and making sure we're going down the right track and what we're looking to do with this. So at that point, I will be quiet, and any members of the subcommittee wish to add in anything? Luther, Janet, Mark?
Good job. Jeff.
One thing that came about, and this suggestion came from Mike D'Amato, who's again is working with us on this, his company Tyche, working with us for development of the POCD, was a top 10, and I'm not talking about a David Letterman top 10. I'm talking about top 10 objectives and potentially identifying, ranking those, and using those, assigning 1 year each of the POCD to get it done. Some maybe we think we can get things done earlier, so we'll put it to the front as a first year, second year, third year. Those things we think we need to develop more time and effort and input. So putting those back, but again, making sure that we are doing that. The other thing that's very, very interesting and has gotten some good feedback from people is having a regular meeting of our commissions to give feedback to each other and to kind of not work in a silo, know what's going on with the other commissions and how we can work together to get things done. Whether we're using the POCD and its objectives or more of the new initiatives that have to come up, whether it's state issues, money issues, whatever, in order to help the town and get that open communication amongst all the different commissions. And that's been met with, we've introduced it at a couple of places, and it's been met with a lot of nodding heads and agreeing that we shouldn't be working in those silos. So, Nora, do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, this listening session, where is it going to be and what time?
Knowlton Hall from 6 to 8
Okay.
on the 28th, March 28th. Anyone else? Feel free. I'll make sure we start sending our invites for the subcommittee to the commission members. So if you have an interest in coming by and seeing how we're working and what we're talking about, or if there's anything of interest on the agenda as we get into more, we're actually thinking about bringing in some of the people in the different sections, especially EDC and the governance to come in and talk to us directly, as well as their narrative section that they develop, so we can talk about streamlining and making sure that we're hitting on all the cylinders. Okay, very good. Thank you for your attention. Zoning officer report, and Mike, I think we need to go into executive session on this.
Yeah, so just for clarification and just for Cheyenne's purposes.
Thank you.
We'll take it'll require a motion from the commission to go into executive session, and with the time, I will pause the recording. We will go into executive session, leave the meeting running, and anybody that's not on the commission will stay here. And then when the commission's finished, we'll come back out of executive session. I'll start the recording, and then we will go on from there. There, I think, will be nothing left on the agenda at that point, but we'll adjourn, and there will be no decisions made during the executive session portion of the meeting.
Right. So Cheyenne, as Mike explained, when we go into executive session, please hang around until we come back so we can get the final, when we came out of executive session and our adjournment of the meeting.
Will do. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. So is there a motion to move into executive session?
Motion made.
Jerry Dufresne? Motion, is there a second?
Janet, Bellamy, I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Okay, so give me 1 second.
And that is at 8:15.
I will put together a breakout room, and I will move the commissioners in. So just give me 1 second. Stop the recording.
There we go. Okay, so we have planning and zoning has come out of executive session at 8:31 p.m. Mike, we don't need a motion to come out, do we?
Yeah, we're out of executive session, and again, just for the record, there are no decisions associated with that we'll be making at this point.
Right. Okay. Anything else you want to offer on your report?
I think that we've covered most of what we've been working on in the bulk of the meeting.
Okay. All right. Very good. Again, thank you for your attention. We've got some Mike has a bunch of work to do, but we need to help support him and Bonnie and what they're putting together and what we want to see in these plans. So please review the materials. Feel free to go back and review the materials again, give any input you feel is effective and helpful. And again, the listening session on the 28th from 6 to 8. If you really want to know something, then let me know what your favorite pizza is so we can get it out there. Motion to adjourn. Jerry, I need a verbal. You're muted.
Jerry Dufresne, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
It's Janet, I'll second.
Janet seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much for your time. Cheyenne, thank you. If you have any questions, please reach out. And everyone be safe out there. Enjoy the nice weather.
Thank you, Jeff.